Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Frank Warren says we will push for Catterall to face Jose Ramirez. A portion of the article reads, the unbeaten Brit has been waiting for his world title shot since last year when Maurice Hooker was the WBO champion, but Hooker was knocked out in a unification clash with Ramirez. A week ago, the WBO ordered Ramirez to make a mandatory defense against Catterall. If a deal is not reached in the coming weeks, then the sanctioning body will order the two sides to take part in a purse bid. Jack Catterall has been patient. Now it's his turn to get his world title shot. The classy Chorley, light welterweight, is the WBO mandatory contender for Jose Ramirez, Warren told Daily Star. And we will push for Catterall to get his chance after he worked hard to get himself into position to fight for the title. Catterall is unbeaten in 25 bouts and, like many, has been waiting to get back in the ring after the coronavirus delays. Ramirez and his team were quick to shout up an undisputed clash with Josh Taylor next after his win over Victor Pistol last weekend. Scotland ace Taylor defends his IBF and WBA titles later on this month against Apinun Konsung at BT Sports Studios. Taylor has been vocal about facing the American, who also holds the WBC title at the weight in this division. But we can't forget Catterall to get his shot first at Ramirez, and then we can make an all-British, undisputed clash. One an event that would be between two unbeaten fighters from these shores. That's assuming Jack Catterall were to upset the plans, upset the apple cart for Jose Ramirez, and beat him for his two world titles at 140 pounds.
This isn't what I expected.
I honestly thought that the situation would be a lot more negotiable between the network ties of Frank Warren to Bob Arum and Bob Arum to the WBO, who he's always had a way with over the years. I thought that this mandate would get pushed to the back burner in light of the potential undisputed title fight at this weight. Yet Jack Catterall has been persistent, and Frank Warren's behind him.
And apparently so is the WBO.
As a boxing fan, I'd like to see the undisputed title fight at 140 pounds sooner than later, and I'd like to see it before the year is out.
That's what I want to see.
I'll also go as far as saying that I think Jack Catterall should probably wait for the chance to fight for all of the belts instead of just one or two of them. If he challenges Jose Ramirez in Jose's very next fight, only the WBC and WBO titles will be on the line, whereas if he waits for the outcome of Taylor versus Ramirez to be decided, he could get the chance to fight for all of the belts at this weight. Though I think what Jack Catterall is afraid of is that once the winner of that fight is decided, once a victor emerges, the victor won't fight him. The victor will move up in weight to the welterweight division and fight Terrence Crawford, and Jack will be left fighting for what is a vacant title. I think that's why he's pushing for the shot. And lest we forget the cautionary tale we saw with Dillian Whyte very recently. You know, Dillian Whyte was the mandatory challenger for the WBC title in the heavyweight division, and I guess he fought in one fight too many.
Took one too many chances.
He has lost his mandatory status to Alexander Povetkin. Perhaps a fighter like Jack Catterall is looking at this and telling himself, well, not going to sit on my hands and wait for that to happen to me. I'm not going to roll the dice with someone else. I want my shot, and I want my shot now. I want my shot before the year is out. If it happens that way, that pushes the undisputed title fight between the winner of Ramirez versus Catterall and the winner of Taylor versus Konsung into 2021. That is the look of it. The WBO has already ordered the fight. The Catterall side of things, Frank Warren, those guys, their tune hasn't changed. This isn't what I expected. I expected that Bob Arum and his way with the WBO would allow him some leeway to orchestrate that undisputed title fight at 140 pounds, and Jack would be left on the back burner. There appears to be a change in course, and it might be about Ramirez versus Catterall before it even becomes about Ramirez versus Taylor. Stay tuned. In super middleweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn on Canelo versus Saunders or Smith. We're waiting on Golden Boy. I've said I think we give it until the end of this week. If not, I think they should fight each other. Yes, this year. It's an obvious unification fight, and it's a really, really good fight. Now, this is going to sound strange to you guys out there, but I actually find a fight between Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith a lot more intriguing than a fight with either of them against Canelo. That's right. Essentially what I'm saying is, I'd rather see Billy Joe Saunders versus Callum Smith than either one of them against Canelo. The situation with Canelo Alvarez hasn't gotten any better the last couple of weeks and months. They're in the middle of a feud between the Golden Boy Promotions Canelo Alvarez side and the DAZN people. The DAZN people want a premier opponent, and for some reason, they don't view Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith as premier opponent options to justify the kind of prices that Canelo Alvarez gets. The situation with Canelo is just as immaterial as it has been the last couple of weeks and months. So instead of Billy and Callum waiting around to win the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes, I'd rather see them fight each other. And I view a fight between them as more of a 50-50 fight than either one of them against Canelo Alvarez. With Canelo, it's almost a foregone conclusion that if it goes to the cards, they're gonna give it to Canelo.
Hey, 114, Floyd Mayweather of all people, for Christ's sake.
You know, you can sit here and have discussions, have debates about who really won the two Golovkin fights. You can do the same thing with the Lara fight as well. But the one fight where you can't do that, where it's really not up for debate, where Canelo Alvarez was thoroughly outboxed, that was the Floyd Mayweather fight. And in that fight, they tried to 114 that guy. I mean, if any fight drives that point home more so than any other fight, it really is that fight. That even a fighter with the status and the stature of a Floyd Mayweather Jr. saw at least one funny-looking fucking scorecard when he locked horns with Canelo Alvarez. So what do you think happens to a Billy Joe Saunders over Callum Smith if they go to the judges' scorecards with Canelo Alvarez? It's almost a foregone conclusion. And I'm not telling you that Canelo Alvarez can't beat either of these two fighters fair and square. For what it's worth, I think he can. I'm just saying that Canelo Alvarez has a way with judges. Let's not kid ourselves, let's not be coy, and let's not be naive about it. There's no way you can justify 114 in the Floyd Mayweather fight. You can sit here and argue about Golovkin, and you can sit here and argue about Lara. But if no other fight drives that point home, the Floyd Mayweather fight will. You can't go to the cards with Canelo Alvarez. You have got to beat this guy with a chair in order to get a fair shake on the cards. And those things in mind, it takes away the air of intrigue for a fight with a Callum Smith or a fight with a Billy Joe Saunders, because I don't see either of those two guys knocking out Canelo Alvarez.
No way.
Short of a knockout, you're not beating this guy. For what it's worth, I don't think Canelo needs the judges to beat Billy Joe Saunders. I don't think he needs the judges to beat Callum Smith. I think that Canelo Alvarez is a more skilled, more experienced, and more capable boxer than either of those two guys. It's just that the air of intrigue is sapped based on Canelo's controversial scorecards in the past. That what if one of these guys shells out a career best performance against Canelo Alvarez? They won't get a fair shake with the judges, and that hurts the overall intrigue of the fight, of the fights. That I'd rather see Callum in there with Billy, because at least against each other, they can get a fair shake. More so than they can against Canelo Alvarez. The easiest way to put it is that either one of these two guys against Canelo Alvarez, that ain't a 50-50 fight. Whether it's Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith against Canelo, either one of them. It's not a 50-50 fight, but them against each other.
It's more of an even fight.
And it's a more even playing field. Thus, it is more intriguing because the outcome isn't a foregone conclusion. I know that both Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith would sooner take their chances with Canelo due to the financial incentive a fight with him provides than taking a chance against each other. And I understand that. It is prize fighting after all. I'm just saying that as a boxing fan, a fight between Billy and Callum is harder to call than a fight with Canelo. Thus, it has more of an air of intrigue. So I'd rather see that. A fight where the outcome isn't quite as obvious. Don't know if it'll happen that way, but I'm actually hoping it does.
Now you got people saying, or Devin Haney saying, that I'm trying to overprice myself. It's not my fault that these people don't know their worth. But since you playing with me, shorty, tell Eddie to send me the contract for 1.5. Tell him to call Al, and I'm going to beat your ass. Point blank period. We ain't got nothing else to talk about. Send the contract over for the 1.5. I'll fight you for it. Make it happen. The stuff with Terrence, it was personal. It was personal, so I was definitely willing, to take that fight for that number. With Devin Haney, that was business. You know what I'm saying? Now you saying I'm trying to duck? He saying I'm trying to duck him? Stop playing, shawty. Since you playing with me, tell motherfucking Eddie. Tell Eddie to send the contract over. You know what I'm saying? I already spoke to Al. Al said, you know what I'm saying? Well, girl, you know, you. I mean, we have a good business relationship, you know, but you can fight wherever you want. You know, if these guys serious about it, tell them to send you a contract. So send me the contract. I'll fight you for the 1.5. I'm going to beat your little ass, shorty. I'm going to beat your ass. I hope it's worth it. You know, and then your father talking about something, yeah, you do this, that, and the third. First of all, I'm the challenger. The challenger isn't the one who writes the demands and stuff like that. With Terrence Crawford, he was offering Kell Brook 1.5, meaning his team was going to put the money up for him to fight, you know what I'm saying, Kell Brook. Al Haney not going to put no motherfucking money up for Devin Haney. You know what I'm saying? He was like, well, Gary, you know, he's the champion. He's the one that come up with that. You know, it's not the champion. The challenger ain't the one to come up with the figures. You know what I'm saying? So if he really want to fight, tell him to send the contract. Send the 1.5. I'm going to beat your ass, shawty.
I don't know that any of this is going to result in an actual fight, and I question the earnestness of Gary Russell Jr.'s call-outs. I question whether or not he's being serious, that he would accept $1.5 million to travel from 126 up to 135 to challenge Devin Haney for his version of the WBC title at that weight. I question how serious Gary Russell Jr. is being, because I'd sooner believe that he is simply using the names of other fighters and social media as a tool to stay relevant at a time when he himself has nothing going on. For a long time, I felt for the plight of Gary Russell Jr. I never liked how Leo Santa Cruz avoided him at 126 pounds. It's just that Leo Santa Cruz is one guy. Leo Santa Cruz does not make up the whole of 126. And if Gary Russell Jr. really were trying to make waves for his career and his reign as a champion, there were other avenues to pursue. I never saw Gary exhibit the same energy for, say, Josh Warrington, IBF champion, Oscar Valdez, the then WBO champion, that he exhibited over the years for Leo Santa Cruz. And Leo, I reiterate, is one guy, just one guy, was one guy in the featherweight division. If that guy's giving you the cold shoulder, there are other avenues to peruse, other fights to pursue. And Gary didn't pursue any of them. He maintained a sparse schedule of activity that hurt his marquee value. If nobody looks at you as an incentive, it's because you're never fighting. So he says he's willing to go up 2 divisions to challenge Devin Haney for Devin's version of the WBC title for $1.5 million. And I ask myself, how serious is Gary Russell Jr. being here when, you know, you probably could have got $1.5 million to fight Josh Warrington?
If you wanted to.
But you dismissed him. In many ways, you're still dismissing him. And you expect us to believe that you would take that amount of money to challenge Devin Haney when, you know what, you stand a better chance of beating Josh Warrington than you do Devin Haney. I mean, you guys don't think that Eddie Hearn would have put up at least $1.5 million for Gary Russell Jr. to fight Josh Warrington? I think he would have. He gave Mikey Garcia $7 million for Jesse Vargas. He was prepared to put up that amount of money for Jermall Charlo to cross the street and fight Demetrius Andre. Something very similar applies to Gervonta Davis and Tevin Farmer. Think about it. He gave Jose Ramirez $4 million to fight Maurice Hooker. He gave Oscar Rivas $1 million to fight Dillian White. So he wouldn't have put up 1.5 for Gary to cross the street and fight Josh?
I think he would have.
Gary Russell Jr. is still a champion in the featherweight division, so that door's not even completely closed. If Gary wanted that fight, I actually think it's on the table for him, but we're supposed to believe that he would accept that same amount of money to fight Devin Haney?
At 135.
Gary says that he spoke with Al Heyman. Al Heyman, the advisor extraordinaire, and as the advisor extraordinaire, why isn't he advising Gary to pursue a fight with Josh Warrington instead for the same amount of money? I'm sure that Eddie would put it up.
I don't really think this guy's being serious, man.
If I'm being honest, I don't think that any of this is going to result in a fight, though I wouldn't mind being wrong about it, as Garden Gnome Gary has fast become one of the more annoying mouthpieces on the PBC side of the street. sure you're all aware of the hollow call-outs to Terrence Crawford that he would travel from 126 past 130, 135, and 140 all the way up to 147 for $2 million?
And why? Because you got caught in a lie?
Because you got caught telling tall tales on YouTube channels about how you broke Terrence Crawford's jaw and several eyewitnesses stepped forward and debunked your story? Is that why you'd go from 126 up to 147 for a meager $2 million?
Yeah, I don't believe any of that shit.
I'm not sure how much I believe any of this shit, though. Garden Gnome Gary has left the ball in Eddie Hearn's court. To be honest, a fight with Gary Russell Jr. would be a lot more interesting than what's on the table for Devin Haney right now, which isn't very much, as most of the big names in the lightweight division are all tied up with each other. So if Garden Gnome Gary wants to dare to be great, put up the $1.5 million and send him the contract. Call his bluff, if he is in fact bluffing. I mean, I honestly think he is, though there really is only one way to find out.